In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping Podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And AC, today's episode is going to be pretty freaking awesome, I would say.
I love it whenever we have subject matter experts on, but I think we have someone that just really meshes and fits in kind of with our world and the whole emergency planning side and all this stuff we harp on all the time with having your contingency plans, your emergency plans. So yeah, Sam from M.A.D is here today. So Sam, thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. This is a really awesome opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And we're excited to have you on because you are kind of that subject matter expert in contingency planning operations. And for anyone who doesn't really know about M.A.D or who you are, would you mind kind of walking us through that 5 to 10 minute elevator bio, the military bio of what you do?
Yeah, of course. So we'll start back in December of 2023. So I was active duty Navy at the time, doing nuclear command and control operations aboard an aircraft called TACAMO. So a lot of the stuff that we would do is emergency planning, contingency planning for different stuff around the world, specifically nuclear command and control type stuff. So I was really highly trained in executing emergency plans for all these crazy things that could happen around the world. There came a time when I realized, like, hey, like I do all this stuff at work. I do all this emergency planning. I execute contingency plans all the time, but my family doesn't have one. Like, I don't have a personal plan because I always thought, you know what, if anything happens, I'm going to be on the jet. It's fine. I'm going to be, and I'll be flying away. But I realized, that's got to end at some point. At some point, I'm no longer going to be on this aircraft doing that job, which is kind of where I am right now. One thing that really drove that point home was, if anybody remembers the February 2024 AT&T outage. So,
Oh, yes.
I was at
Yeah.
work in the morning, and I needed to call my wife, who was extremely pregnant at the time, and I couldn't call her because at that time, AT&T was out, and I kind of freaked out. I was like, hey, like I don't have my own personal pace plan set up here for my family. So I decided, hey, that's, enough is enough. I need to actually take my professional experience and turn that into something that like not only I could use at home, but I could also distribute to other family members. So that's whenever the contingency planning framework that I've developed was formed. I took a lot of my professional experience and I took the crazy stuff that normal people aren't going to deal with out of it and turned it into something that any given family could take and tailor to whatever emergencies or contingencies are causing them anxiety. So I look at it as a form of insurance. You always hope that you don't have to use it. But if you go into a situation without insurance, you're going to regret it and you're going to wish you had that insurance. So I think of it as like disaster, emergency preparedness, insurance. That's my basic elevator pitch.
I really like that because that's a fantastic way to look at just preparing in general. So if you're okay with it, we've got some questions, not just about Mad Gear, but also kind of your experience. And if you're okay with us just peppering you with them, we can get started. Really go after it.
Yeah, of course. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm ready to answer whatever you got. If there's something I can't talk about, I'll just say it because
Totally.
given my role and my work in the past, there's some things that just like can't talk about. But otherwise, I'm an open book.
Maybe you can't say it, but like, so the plane, is that like the doomsday plane that we always hear about, like seeding
Yeah.
clouds and turning the frogs gay? That's it, right? Like that's
I
the
wouldn't.
plane you were on?
I was on the E6B Mercury, so it's one of our country's doomsday planes. I'll say that. It's the one that I have experience with, and our biggest thing is nuclear deterrence. So by doing the mission that we do and the job that I did, uh, the idea was that we have such a robust network of communications and capabilities that nobody ever wants to even try, because a second strike capability is always possible because of this aircraft. So the main thing we would do is keep communication lines open and through all throughout the spectrum. So that's another kind of part of my background is I'm a big comms nerd. So I was an airborne communications officer, which is kind of the more technical side of the job. So that's why a lot of comms type stuff pops up in the contingency planner and in MAD gear content as well, because that's something that I dealt a lot with. And I strongly believe that to execute any emergency plan, you have to have good communications. Or if you don't have communications, you have to fall back to a plan for a no comms situation. So, yes, that's the plane, the E6B, the doomsday plane, as people like to call it.
I used to work a lot with Channel 1 on Discus 3, so I worked with Takamo, the aerial bunker, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that. Aerial bunker.
That's very cool. So from a comm side, I mean, that's obviously then that's your bread and butter, and that's, I guess, what you're passionate about. So can you tell us kind of how you took some of that very sophisticated military comms that you would obviously have to be trained for and put that into a little book that people could easily learn? Like you've got a cipher table and things like that. Can you talk about how, like, what that is, and then how you can teach sort of, comms inept people how to actually think comms are important and use them in that kind of situation?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, what you're talking about with the cipher table, one-time pads, and all that type of stuff, yeah, we found that, of course, to be very important in my side of things, because you don't want to be talking about sensitive stuff in the clear, as we would call it in our lingo, which basically just means like you don't want to talk about sensitive details where anybody with an HF radio could just listen in and pick it up, because that has happened before, where guys will be on a radio, just maybe mooing or making like meowing or something like that, and people pick it up. It's
Meowing on
doomsday plane
121.5, do you
operators.
guys do that too?
Oh, never. Not once have we ever done that. We don't touch guard. Yep, not once. But secure communications is something that was like my bread and butter, or our bread and butter, really. And it's not something that a lot of people think about. And I will admittedly say it's not always the tool that people are going to need. Like the plan, I would say, is the most important thing. Having fallback options, like a pace plan, is second most important. And then in a situation where you need to be secure about your communications for sensitive movements or whatever you can come up with, and that's where I think communication security would come in. So I'll push back to the pace plan real quick, which is you can use it for communications, and that's what it's primarily known for. But I'll also quickly caveat and say pace planning can be used for just about anything. You could have a power place plan, you could have a communications pace plan, obviously a movement pace plan. So like you start off with a car. If that doesn't work, you go to the other car, and if that doesn't work, and so forth. So let me take another step back real quick. And for anybody that doesn't know what pace planning is, I'll give it a quick definition. So, a PACE plan is just a system in which fallback options are written down and presented. And PACE stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So, that's typically how you would refer to your different options. So, for most people, their primary day to day form of communications is texting somebody on their cell phone. I mean, that's how most of us communicate. Maybe professionally, that would be email. Maybe your backup in a professional world is I don't know, an email or not a like a Zoom chat or some sort of invitation. And then in the normal world for people like communicating with their family, it could be a phone call. Like, oh, they didn't answer the text. I'm going to call them. And if that doesn't work, maybe you have a landline that you think I know they're at school. I'm going to call the front office because my kid's not answering the phone. And then after that, most people probably don't have an emergency plan or like all the way down to level 4, which would be emergency. Most people don't have that. People aren't walking around with a backup radio or a satellite messenger, things like that. But my goal in talking about pace planning and talking about the way we did stuff in like actually it's not just TACAMO. Everybody in the military, for the most part, has fallback communication procedures. You have your main radio. So my goal is to take that type of mentality and challenge people to say, hey, like, do you know how you would actually talk to somebody? Do you know what your backup plan is? Because a lot of people just have not thought about it. So, yeah, that's a
That definitely makes sense. A lot of people don't think about it. And I like how you said that pace planning can be used for not just communications. Yeah, it's very widely known for communications, but um, I mean, how are you going to heat your home? Primary being the furnace, secondary being the fireplace. Uh, your contingency could be maybe the My Buddy's portable heater or something like that, and then your emergency is primitive.
jumping jacks.
Yeah, you're starting a
Yeah,
fire in the living room. Like, I don't know if this is a
yeah.
good idea or not.
Yeah, right. And you could do it with anything. But that's a whole, I would say, a way of thinking. Like this idea of, like even for evacuation routes, that's another thing that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about necessarily. Like most of the time, if you have to evacuate an area, you're going to say, oh, geez, like, first of all, I don't even know where I would go. I guess I'll go to my parents' house. They live kind of out of town, or I've got an aunt that lives kind of away from everything, or whatever, or just like I don't know anybody in the area, but I'm just going to drive away from the emergency. The issue is that's what everybody else is doing too. If everybody else is going to drive away from the emergency, if the evacuation notice is given, so you can pace plan that as well. You have your primary evacuation route. If you get out before everybody else, all the way down to the emergency route, which could be incredibly circuitous, but still get you to a safe point. So um, it can be, like you said, yeah, it could be used for so many different things.
I like that. So we harp on the pace model all the time, and we talk about how if it's worth preparing for, it's worth pacing out. And basically, in the last 11 minutes and 33 seconds, you've summed up the last 65 episodes of our podcast. So that's basically what we do all the time. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
exactly right. I really like that. So can you talk about some of the emergency plans that you have personally developed for, I guess, the layman? Can you talk about, what are the things that you're like, here's what people just generally don't know or think about, and here's how I have tried to explain that to people that don't do this every single day for their job.
I Okay. Awesome. So I was actually the lead instructor at my squadron. So I got a lot of practice teaching people this type of stuff before I ever made the product. So I was the person responsible for training people all the way up from like, I don't know anything about this jet or the mission, all the way up to where they're a competent operator who can be deployed independently. So I took some of my experience there and I took my experience with templatizing and creating like worksheets for missions and just used that experience to do almost the exact same thing, but for a very generic emergency planning model. So I thought my parents, they don't really do a bunch of emergency planning stuff. I thought, how can I communicate a templatized system that is modular enough to be applied to just about anything? How could I take that system, deliver it to my parents, and then have them take it and run with it? So that was my goal, was to make that type of system. So that's why every sheet on the printed version. So if you ever buy the actual physical contingency planner, the back of each sheet has the guide on how to use it. So I thought, like, it's the reference needs to be very close by. So if you just look at the back of the sheet, that's like how you use it. And that's how a lot of stuff in the military is too, for any like single sheet stuff. It's like, or even like, IRS tax documents. If you, there's like a little um, kind of footnote that tells you how to fill out each individual form. So that was kind of the idea there. Make every sheet standalone. So if I need to, I could rip that thing out and hand it to somebody and they could look at it. Number one, for the instructions on the front. Number two, they could read the back of the sheet and see, oh, hey, this is how I actually need to use this thing. And sometimes I will admit, like, some concepts are much more difficult to explain than others. Like, for example, the one-time pad. It's it kind of takes an entire lesson just to conceptualize the idea. And for anybody that doesn't know what a one-time pad is, it's an encryption technique that is theoretically unbreakable so long as the key, or really just the phrase that you're sending, is only used once and is never repeated and actually uses completely random numbers. couple things like that. Um, but some of the concepts are much more complicated. Whereas an evacuation plan, that's something most people can conceive right away. So the difference between taking an evacuation plan and putting all the information on one sheet and taking a one-time pad and putting all the information on one sheet is difficult. And so, but all that to say, using my experience with trying to take something that I could teach a concept they have to know for their job and teach it to anybody was my experience and also inspiration for taking this more generic model and making it in such a way that I could teach anybody about it. And when that fails, what I've attempted to do is make like Instagram content or some other things. Like I'm working on a course right now that will take literally anybody that is interested in this type of stuff and walk them from like, day one, I don't know anything, all the way to I could pick up this thing and I could be the leader of my group and actually make a plan with it. So that's something I'm working on right now as well.
That's awesome. So when I say, "How did you teach the layman?" You're like, "'Cause that's what I actually do." You're
Yeah.
talking about actually taking people from 0 and teaching them how to do this contingency planning. That's awesome. So I guess it let's talk about for people that don't know exactly what your product is, the big ones, the contingency planner and the quick draw cards, those are the 2 things. Can you tell me who should use those and own those and how those 2 things differ and how, say, a family unit would use those products in practicality, in real life?
Yeah, sure. So, one thing I'll say is, I think everybody should have a contingency plan. So, who should use it? I would say any group or family that feels that they need to have a centralized, unified emergency plan, that's for you. So, that's if you have young children or if you have a big family and you know that everybody needs to be on the same page to follow potentially complex instructions in an emergency, then it's for you. And I've having been through multiple emergencies, anybody else who's been through this, you know that as soon as it happens, things can go out the window. Like, oh, I know what I would do. I would do X, Y, Z, and then it's like all that's off the table as soon as you have first contact with the emergency, and that's unfortunately very common. And the way that we dealt with this in the military, anybody else that's in the military will know, like. Uh, Usually you deal with that with having briefings, having plans, doing exercises. So that you end up just falling back on the training that you have. You're not just going to come up with some grand plan in an emergency whenever fight or flight kicks in. You're going to fall back to your best level of training. So the idea here is that anybody that can conceive that they would need an emergency plan should be using something like this. It doesn't have to be our product, but a written plan that everybody else also has a copy of. And here's another thing I want to kind of foot stomp. A lot of people have a concept of a plan. Like I have, oh, I know what I would do in an emergency. Like I'm the leader of my household. I would take charge of the situation. I would protect my family. And I think they genuinely believe this, and it can get you into trouble if you have that thought pattern, but you haven't prepared appropriately. Because if you happen to be at work and your spouse is across town doing chores or like errands, and your kids are at school and something kicks off and you don't have the time or the capability to reach out to them and say, hey, like this thing is happening, you need to do XYZ, then this idea of one central person having the plan goes out the window and everybody else is left thinking, hey, what do I do? I don't know. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what the plan is. Dad has the plan, but I can't talk to dad right now. Or God forbid, you're the only person with the plan and you are incapacitated in a way that you can't guide your family anymore or guide your group. Then that's another reason that this plan needs to be created and distributed. So for the two products, the contingency planner, this is the type of thing that I would imagine, and I've talked to plenty of customers. What'll happen is, just like you might sit down at the end of the month and look at your finances and, see like, hey, how do we do? Let's plan for next month. This would be a similar thing, like a Sunday night kind of kitchen table conversation. You sit down and say, hey, you know, there have been a lot of wildfires lately. What are we going to do about that? Where are we going to go? It's like, summer and there's a lot of brush everywhere. All that kind of stuff. Like you sit down and you kind of tabletop these situations, which admittedly can be very difficult for people to say like, hey, I want to sit down and actually think about horrible things that could happen to the family. It's one of the big reasons people avoid the topic is yeah, this is something I like to tell people. So I'll go on a quick tangent. Financial planning, what do you get out of it? You get more money. So money's cool. Everybody likes money, right? So you get something out of that. Let's say fitness planning, right? At the end of it, you look better, you feel better, you're stronger. Cool. You'll sit down and write a fitness plan. Emergency planning is kind of the opposite. You know, you hope you never need it. You have to think about something that's horrible. And most of the time, honestly, you probably won't need it. Like 95% of days, maybe even 99% of days, it's just something that's going to be gathering dust and it's only going to be picked up or reconsidered whenever something bad happens. So it's it's hard to talk about, and I think that that's one of the biggest things that keeps people from talking about it is that people don't want to think about emergencies. I in the course that I'm making right now, I have an entire section on assumptions. And uh, one of the assumptions is like, oh, like somebody's going to take care of it. Like the authorities will alert me. Like people have all these assumptions and reasons that they just end up foregoing any of this planning. So that's just something I wanted to say real quick. But as far as who needs it and what the products are, the main, like the center point would be the contingency planner. And also the contingency planning app that we've recently developed called Ready Plan. So I'll get into that a little bit later. But um, the physical product, so the actual planner is kind of the central core product. People can buy expansions if they need more, inventory lists or more evacuation plans, all that kind of stuff. And I look at the quick draw cards as an like everyday carry companion. So you can write down some quick emergency notes on those quick draw cards and say distribute them to people. Think of it as like the get home plan. So to get around this idea of like, hey, like, somebody in the family has the entire plan written. If you don't want to rewrite the entire thing 10 times, not 10s, but however many people you have in your family, if you don't want to rewrite it that many times, you can say make a very simplified plan using these quick draw cards like, hey, here's who to call, here's how to get home, here's your like very bare bones way of like getting back to the family unit so that we can execute our unified plan. So that's kind of the difference between the two. One is the overarching master plan, and the other is the like bare bones. This is what you really need just to get back to like the people or the person that has the grand vision.
That
Okay.
makes
And so
sense.
we've talked about this on our show a little bit with some of our we actually did an entire episode on tabletop exercises and wargaming like that. And we brought up MAD a lot because we thought as a family unit, obviously the contingency planner is kind of what, yeah, maybe the head of the household does, but the quick draw cards, that's something the kid can have in their backpack. And if something happens, comms drop, or there's an earthquake, or there's something happens, or the school bus breaks down, the kid's got that in his backpack and can open that up and say, okay, what was I supposed to do if this thing happened? And the other thing I really like about it, because it is analog, is you can sit down with the family and make your children write it out in their own words, in their own handwriting. Like, here is your quick draw card, little Johnny, and you're going to write it out with your Sharpie. And it's going to be in kind of your own words rather than, your parents just kind of pinning the note to your chest that you never read.
Yeah. No, that I like that a lot because, writing something down, like personally, it commits it to memory at least more than just say like, I have this thing in my bag and I'll look at it if I need it. Just like anything, like if you have a med kit, you can have it in your car or in your bag, but if you never take it out and use it or actually like, put your hands on each individual thing, it's like you won't really know it. So that idea of having everybody sit down and actually write out in their words the plan is a really, really good idea. I like that a lot.
And you've brought up several things that I just want to touch on, like best laid battle plans never survive contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically where the whole PACE plan came from, and it's 100% true. But you talked about having your references close and having the reference on how to fill out each sheet on the back of said sheet is brilliant in my opinion. But I mean, you said we do it with IRS forms, we do it with military forms. Yes, a lot. Even the M18 Claymore anti-personnel mine has front toward enemy written on it. So we can't screw it up. But in terms of having references close to you and on you at all times, I kind of want to talk about the Ready Plan app because I've been playing around with it and um, kind of building contingency plans inside of the app. And I think it's the way that it's done is super simple and very easy to use. It's very intuitive, but it has the potential to become kinetic at any point. And it is kind of that EDC carry on your phone. Do you want to talk about the app
Yeah,
and where this
for
went?
sure. Yeah, so I really appreciate you saying all that.
Can you tell us when, yeah, what do you get out of the app? You're free, you have a free version of the app. And then I would like to hear what do you get when you pay for it? And then lastly, I'd like to hear what you have to say to the people that go, the EMP is just going to take that out and it won't work.
So I think that I know you guys have an episode on the EMP stuff, and I have my own. I have a lot of thoughts on EMP stuff because that's like also a lot of my background is how do you deal with an EMP? So there's a lot there. We could touch on just a little bit of that later if you want, but at the end of the day, I think meeting people where they're at with emergency planning is crucial because there are people, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they're the people that already think about this stuff and care about it. And my vision and mission is to reach out to people that think, yeah, I would like to do some preparedness stuff, but ooh, preppers, I don't know, that's kind of crazy. Like I don't want to touch any of that stuff because it has a bad rep. So the app in my mind is the solution for people that kind of want to get into this thing, but they don't necessarily want to go full prepper. It's the thing that it's like the foot in the door. Like, hey, you know what? I'm willing to listen. Like, I'm willing to try this thing out. So that's one way I see it. Another way I see it is you might forget your contingency planner. You might forget your quick draw cards. But you know what everybody always has? They always have their phone. People 99% of the time, unless you're going into a skiff or unless you just forgot it, you don't have or you have your phone on you. And that was another idea is like, you know, if you forget your contingency planner, it's like, are you gonna be able to reference your plan? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you remember it, maybe you've memorized it, but I think I'm betting that most people are always gonna have their phones on them because we use it for just about everything these days. So we really wanted to bring base the contingency planner to the phone. And in order to do that, of course, we needed to have an app. So that's where the app was born, really wanting to cover all of our bases. Um, and then, like you'd mentioned, Chris, the app it has the potential to do a lot, but what we've seen is people will often download the app, they'll create one plan, and then they won't put anything in the plan. And I've had a lot of people reach out and say, "Hey, like I don't know what to do. Like this is a good idea, but what in the world am I supposed to do?" So one of the things we recently added was templates. So people absolutely love templates, and I don't blame anybody for this. Most people don't know where to start thinking about this stuff, and I've tried to tackle it with content, YouTube videos, Instagram Reels, stuff like that. But what we found has worked the best is just saying, "Hey, here's a sample plan. Here is a sample wildfire plan. Here is a sample tornado plan." And we've had a lot of people in the community reach out and say, "Hey, I've made a plan. Uh, can you look at it?" And it's usually a great plan. Like they've made a better plan, honestly, than I ever could have for a specific situation. I think of myself as the facilitator, the person who brings the framework, and there are tons of people out there who will take the product and turn it into something even better than I ever could have. They'll make suggestions like, "Hey, what if we could X, Y, Z?" And I'm like, "That's a great idea. Let's implement that as soon as we can." So templates very helpful. Very because a lot of times people they want things or they want to be guided because they want the opinion of an expert, and not everybody is an expert on this stuff. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. So that's one direction we're taking the app right now is not just giving people a just here's the app, here's the framework, figure it out. There are a lot of guides on the app. Like you can click a guides button and read like about each individual sheet. If you open a sheet, there's a little info button that you can click and you can read all about it. But sometimes, honestly, that's not enough because it'll tell you how to do one sheet, but it doesn't give you an example of what the entire thing could look at, which is one way people learn. And that's one thing I learned as an instructor. Sometimes you can't just give people the textbook and say, "Hey, read the textbook and get back to me. Like, okay, like 25% of people can do that, and they're going to say, oh, that worked really well. But we have to acknowledge that some people learn differently. Sometimes it's by diagrams and videos. Sometimes it's by like verbally, like they can, if you say it back to me, then you'll remember it. But a lot of people, and this is how I am as well, it's like learn by doing. So that is kind of how the templates work. You see what a successful plan looks like and you can emulate it. You could say, hey, like that's a good idea. Why don't I just do that? Or modify it. See, that's the thing. If you download one of the templates on our app, you can modify it however you want. So you could take it and say, I don't like that step, replace it. I'm going to reorder this because I think that should go there and so forth. Um, but as far as the things that people get in the app that can be free and the other things that are premium, I'll break that down real quick. So for the free users, you can have basically two complete plans. And we came up with two because we think most people in a region or whatever are really usually threatened by a couple of things. So, like, let's say Florida, for example, hurricanes is usually what comes to people's minds. So,
Right.
a hurricane could be a big thing. And then perhaps like some like things that come from that, like a power outage plan or something like that. Some like very generic, basic, like big level threats, or even a general emergency plan. Like it doesn't matter what the emergency is. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to get out of town. Here's how we're going to pack the car. Here's where we're going to go, and here's what we're going to bring with us, and so forth. So we figured that you know, providing people with that was enough to actually make the product something you can use while it's free. And that was the goal. Was like we want it to be able to be something you can download and use on day one, and you don't have to pay because I don't necessarily want to gatekeep emergency planning. But it is a tool at the end of the day that has some premium features, and I am trying to make this my full-time gig, which means I have to be able to feed my family. So, and in order to do that, we've added some premium features that will push people towards like and I think they're good features. That's why I do charge for them. But one of them is AI. So like I know a lot of people hate AI, but when it comes to things like making a plan based on a prompt or a situation, we've tailored a chat GPT model to take what you tell it and then use our system to provide you with a plan that could look something like what you're looking for. It's not always going to be perfect, but it will get you pointed in a direction that that's better than nothing. That's for sure. We've tested it a bunch. One thing you can do with AI whenever you use it on the API side, which is like for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's just like kind of the background. Like if I'm talking to ChatGPT directly and not through a web interface, then I can ping their servers and say, "Hey, can you process this for me?" But kind of a backdoor method. So what we've done is we've added all of our stuff into that request for information. Like this is a request for an emergency plan. The emergency plan needs to be in this format. If the person gives you information, then that information needs to be like what the emergency plan is about. Take into account all the information that they provide, stuff like that. So that service also costs money. So whenever if you do a bunch of AI requests, you're going to get charged for it. So that's one reason that's premium, but it also provides a lot of value because I've used it a ton because sometimes it's hard to come up with like, hey, am I missing anything? That's one thing I'll use. I'll like examine a plan and say, this is my current emergency plan, blah, 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 blah. What steps am I forgetting? And sometimes it'll come back with some really solid stuff. Other times, not so solid, or maybe more elementary type stuff. But um, over time, we think that we can hone the way that we're making those requests to really provide people with solid emergency plans. Because at the end of the day, it's got access to the entirety of the internet. So if you if you ask it to do references, I need you to reference FEMA data. I need you to reference local emergency data, blah, 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 or look at, like tornado data in my area and what are the recommended guidelines for following tornado, like safety procedures. Like it'll go find all that stuff for you and it'll put it into your plan. So it can be a very powerful tool.
Does the paid version integrate with ATAC or NIMS or anything like that as far as real-time data information?
Good question. Not yet. And we have a roadmap of things that we want to add, but considering we've both been, full-time employed in the past, like, or very recently, ever since the app was developed, it's tough to add some of those heavier lifts from like a software engineering perspective. Um, so ATAC, in order for us to go the route of ATAC, we first need to add a mapping function. So right now, the exfil or evacuation plan, it will pull Google data and give you a route, but it doesn't display it on a map, and it currently won't allow you to reroute whatever it is that you've selected. So it'll give you a basic route, but it won't say here's a fast, or sorry, not a faster, here's a safer route, or here's another route. It doesn't do that yet because it takes time to program those types of things. But once we have added that feature, which should be, man, when is that coming? I think February is our goal for that, and that'd be February of 2026. We plan to have a map actually in the app where you can see your route. And from there, the intent is to select multiple routes and not the same type of Google routing that you usually have, but routes that avoid certain things. So, like, I want to avoid typically very busy roads. I only want to take roads that have multiple, like something that I could actually escape from and go around an issue. Stuff like that. So that's something that has to be added before we can go the route of ATAC. Because for the most part, ATAC, whenever you're sending waypoints or any type of location data, uh, in order to represent that, we need to have the kind of back end built out first. But that is something we want to do. We definitely want to do ATAC. We're actually working on a web version of the app right now, which I've been testing quite a bit recently. Uh, One critique we've had is that using it on the phone is fine, but a lot of people, they type better on the computer. They're more natively capable of moving things around quickly on a computer. So what we did is we took the phone app and we've ported it over to a web app where you can go create plans and push them directly to your phone so that you can make it more easily and then get it on your phone, and then you can share it with people. And that's the next thing I want to talk about is sharing, because what's the point of an emergency plan if you can't give it to people? It's still good to have, and planning is important, but we find grouping to be, or the grouping function to be, one of the best things that we have. So you can add people to a specific group, and once you've made a plan, you can make that plan available for anybody in your group. So one of the weaknesses with the physical contingency planner is you have to write it multiple times. And if you make a really robust plan, that could be very cumbersome. It could take a lot of work. So with the app, you can make the plan once and you can push it to all the people that need it. And you could even, this is something that's going to come a little later. Uh, right now, our templates are something that we make and then put out to people. But what we want to do is create kind of a forum of sorts where people can share these plans with each other and other people can make suggestions. So instead of just relying strictly on like what you already know in your head or what AI can find on the internet, you can access a community of people that have thought about these things. So you might find experts on really specific things in these forums. But we haven't made it yet, and that's going to take some more time to develop. But we've got a lot of this stuff on our development roadmap, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get more people thinking about emergency planning and actually get them prepared. Because I think a lot of people, they talk about it a lot. They think about it sometimes whenever things happen. But at the end of the day, the actual framework and plan is not there. It might be gear. It might be like, going or like gear and content is like really big, but a lot of times just doing the homework of the plan is not there. And that's kind of the mission. So uh, that's where we're going with the app. But yeah, so
I,
the most premium thing is AI right now and the grouping functions.
I like that. It's learning that the tune in your head you have to write down.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously the like you said, this is the planning part really is the least sexy part of preparedness, and it's like the single most important part of preparedness. Like we just want to go out and buy gear, right? But
Yeah.
that doesn't help if you don't know how to use it and when to use it and all that kind of stuff. So I did notice also there's like a points system in the app that I thought was kind of cool. Like you can earn points. So you cash those in for like a bloomin' onion at some point, or you just get like your name
Ooh,
on the
that's a
sales
good
board
idea.
or something? Yeah, yeah, that'd be kind
Yeah,
of cool, right?
I'll reach out to Outback and see what they have to say about that. I do love bloomin' onions, but, the points and the achievements are we thought of that because it can be boring, kinda like y'all said, like, it's something nobody wants to do really, so we
Yeah.
tried to add that in as a way to it's just a little bit of encouragement. I know it's not the craziest thing, like, it's not like, at least not right now, you can't trade that in for anything, but that's a very good idea. I think, that could be implemented in the future, you earn enough points in the app and you get a free contingency planner or something like that, or, in the future, the thought was, however many, like whatever level you are or however many points you have, that's how many entries you have into a monthly drawing for some emergency gear. So maybe it's like a food
Ooh.
kit, maybe it's a med kit. So like, hey, if you make it all the way to level 9 and you're a subscriber, every month you get 9 entries into this, well, it's just a way to encourage people to stick to it because that's the hard thing is like we have to find ways to help people stick to the planning because it can get boring and it might not feel urgent if nothing bad is happening. It's like, it's the summer, we're doing all these fun things, and like I've got all this fun stuff planned, everything's going great. I'm not going to sit down and think about emergencies. Why would I do that? So just a little bit of encouragement is sometimes really helpful. And I think we're all unless you're like completely steeped in this stuff, like you have a podcast about it or you have a business around it, like most of us are more focused on the good time, which I completely get. That's just human nature. And sometimes it takes just a little bit of a push to get people to do things that are kind of on the responsible side of things. And that's fine. That's just how it is. But so the achievements and points, that's one attempt at that. And the idea for drawings is a future idea once we've implemented a couple of different things that will get people interested in sticking around and doing more things. Because if you go, do some quizzes or a knowledge check, or if you share your plans with people, like you get points for all that stuff. So keeping people engaged in this type of stuff is another one of our goals, and that's also where some of the content comes from as well. Like I try to do some things that are a little goofy because people like humor. It's funny, and a lot of this stuff isn't very fun. But and by fun I mean it can be dark. So some of the content I've been doing recently on Instagram has been I'm trying to layer in some humor so that people say, "Hey, that's funny," and then they actually watch to learn a little bit about things.
We're right there with you. It really is because yeah, you have to add a little humor in because you're right. We're prepping for some very dark, sad stuff for the most part. And I know there are people out there that they do like get off on this idea of this end of the world scenario, but we all know that that is not ideal, right? It's not what you want.
No,
So,
no.
um, but I like that. I really think that's cool with the app. And I don't want to talk about like the EMP all day, but I do want to just kind of hear your rebuttal because we have our own opinions on EMPs and CMEs, and we are probably in the minority of the prepper community where we think that some of those things are not likely. And if they are likely, they're not realistic, so that's kind of where we are. And I would like to hear your idea on that because there's got to be a ton of people that just say, why would I download an app? Because the Russians are going to hit us with an EMP and my app is never going to work.
Yep, I think I've received that comment no less than 1,000 times. I have a couple of like, some of the posts I've done have done pretty well, and, millions of people have seen them, which, of course, means that thousands of people will comment, and one of the most common comments is, like, exactly what you said, "Oh, this will never work in an EMP." And then, of course, the rebuttal will come soon. But what I will say, my first knee-jerk rebuttal is, "Okay, then you need the physical planner. Thank you for bringing that up." So, um, yeah, okay, fine. We have something for that. If you write this stuff down on paper, it doesn't even have to be our planner. It could be you could buy the digital planner, print it out, or you could just come up with the stuff on your own and write it on a notebook, and boom, EMP defeated. But uh, to address the actual EMP stuff, well, first of all, near and far field effects are important to discuss. I don't want to turn this into like a physics lecture, and I'm not even that
Yep.
great at physics. So,
And we did
but
this episode 58. We like totally did
yeah,
dig into all of this, all the
yeah,
things you're
yeah,
about to say, but I just want to hear
yeah.
it from somebody that we haven't discussed it yet. That's not just a neutral third party, but also a little bit of an expert in it.
Right. And this is where it'll get into like, I probably shouldn't like, go talk all about EMPs for respect of my former career because that's something that's typically sensitive and guarded. But you can find a lot of this stuff on YouTube or on you can find it on Google. Like the Department of Transportation has done studies on EMPs. Like all sorts of government agencies have released huge amounts of completely open to the public data on EMPs. And uh, what they found is, well, I mean, if I'm remembering this correctly, a lot of things are still going to work. What the biggest issue is going to be the power grid because all of your electrical lines act as really long conductors.
Long
So,
line
y
conductors, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like, maybe your transformers will blow up, and if you think, okay, so where does that like, is that going to be localized to only the near field effects? So then you have to think like, okay, where is this event localized to? Is it directly over me? Is it hundreds of miles away? It's not necessarily like if EMP, then nothing work. That's too simplistic, but a lot of people think that way. And that it really is just not the case. So it depends on how close you are to the event and what the nature of the event is. Because you've mentioned CMEs like that. I mean, you can also get, like, I mean, you're more likely, in my opinion, and I don't even think it's just my opinion. This is fact. You're more likely to suffer some sort of consequence from a local power outage or from a severe thunderstorm than you ever will be to an EMP. Uh, I think people focus on the big, sexy emergencies like EMPs because it's the trump card. It's like, nope, EMP, nothing's going to work. So what are you going to do
Yep.
now? And it's
Yep.
cooler, I guess, air quotes cooler, to think about the extremes like nuclear war, zombie apocalypse, alien invasion, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I also think that when talking about things like EMPs, people use it as a crutch to not prepare. If it's like, well, the EMP is just going to take it out, so why should I even do anything? Like, I don't need to work out because I'm just going to die, like, or whatever. Like some kind of very
Right.
defeatist mentality of I shouldn't even try.
I'm not gonna eat an apple. Eventually, it'll be a core.
Yeah. And then yeah, so I think the EMP stuff is kinda like you already mentioned, super I know you guys have already covered so much on this, but it's just so unlikely to ever truly impact you. To get to the point where there's an EMP impacting people, so many things had to fail. And having been in the world of, like, the chain of where things are supposed to succeed, I could tell you there's a ton of things that will keep this from happening. Uh, is you would have to basically have somebody who wants to end the world, and at that point, well, I'll just leave it at that. If
Right.
somebody wants to,
Yeah.
you'd be dealing with a lot of other stuff. I don't know if either of you have read Annie Jacobson's Nuclear War: A Scenario?
Yes.
Um, okay, yeah, I very accurate book. I really like that book, and I really like, the stuff Annie Jacobson has put out about that. She's writing another book right now actually on biological war, so I'm excited to read that one whenever it comes out. But she details a lot of the things that would happen in a nuclear war. And I think that we've had a lot of movies about that type of stuff recently. House of Dynamite is also another good movie that kind of details this type of stuff. But in order to get to that point, so many things have to have failed that uh, you would probably already know that these types of things are happening. Um, so that's what I'm going to say about EMPs is extremely, extremely unlikely. And if it does happen, then it's probably not going to impact you the way you think it will. Like a lot of typical devices are still going to work depending on where you are related to this thing. Because if an EMP goes off in Antarctica, you probably won't know about it. If you've or somebody would know about it, but you wouldn't know in your daily life. So it's important to consider proximity. I just say that to say like um, I think it was Starfish Prime.
Yeah. We talked a lot about that too.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
The car still worked in Hawaii, man.
yep,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I go back to this is my one, and I don't wanna talk about it, forever, but yeah, I go back to the kinda almost the wasted weapon theory. Like, if you've got this perfectly good nuclear weapon, why would you rather than use it on, like, some hardened military target or Washington, DC, why would you blow it up, like, a billion miles up in the atmosphere and take out everything that isn't mil-spec 461 and 464 hardened? Like, it's just like, that's kinda been my opinion on it, that if you had this perfectly good nuke, you would use it against, like, a target that would actually help you, I'm using air quotes, like, "win the war." You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, no,
So
there's so many good counters to this idea that an EMP is something that you're ever likely to face. And again, like you're way more likely to, I guess, get in a car wreck or experience a severe thunderstorm or a tornado or a hurricane or any number of things that you should actually be thinking about and preparing for. You can. I would say, like, fine, if you've covered all of your bases, if you already have all of the emergencies that you think that you might face, like, covered, then fine. You can make the bonus EMP plan. Um, Understanding that, it's very unlikely and you're probably wasting your time, making a plan for that. But what I will say is if you do make an EMP-proof plan, it's probably gonna be a pretty solid plan, and it's a good thought exercise to say, "Hey, like, what am I relying on that is sensitive technology?" So it's not a completely, like, I will say this, it's not a completely bogus thing to think about, but, I think people's time is better spent on likely everyday emergencies and scenarios. But the
so
military thinks about these things, that's for sure.
So I'd like to we could actually capitalize on this because you could have an EMP expansion pack for those people on your analog contingency plan. Like you might as well, right? But I want to talk about those a little bit. So let's say I've bought the contingency planner for my family and all the kids have the quick draw cards. Then tell me about, I think you have 4 different expansion packs. What are those for? When would I use those? Why do I need them and why are they cool?
Right. So the 4 currently are the planning expansion, which has, the just overall, like, the contingency plan page, it has the pace plan page, and it has the exfil page. So the idea there is that we've grouped together all the different planning pages. And then we also have, the security expansion, which has all the stuff we talked about earlier, like cipher tables, has cards of the day, has basically a couple of things that would be useful to you if you are going hard on that communication security stuff. We have a logistics expansion, which gives you more go bag packing sheets. It gives you more inventory sheets, more vehicle packing checklists. So that's if you're more concerned about um, the actual logistics and items that you're dealing with in an emergency. So if you have a bunch of stuff that you want to put on a checklist for inventorying, then that's the way you could go. We also added a notes expansion. The notes expansion is just like, hey, I want to write a bunch of freeform stuff, and what that really ends up just being is the paper that we use, which is a tear-proof, waterproof paper that is made here in the U.S. At a place in Colorado, actually. They that stuff is resilient as just regular notebook paper even to begin with. So, if you feel like you have to write a bunch more free-form stuff and you wanna do it on some really resilient paper, then that's the way that you could go. We used to have a one-time pad expansion as well. That's not something we're currently, making. It was kind of a limited time thing, so we did it for a little bit, a lot of people bought it, and then the sales kinda dropped off, and we kind of just let it be a legacy item. So we did used to have that expansion, but we don't currently have it. Um, so yeah, those are the expansions. Typically, what we've seen is people will buy, like, one of these planners, and then, um a couple months later, people will come back and buy 1 or 2 more of these. What we used to do is, and this is kind of a business logistics thing, so it's not super important, but we used to sell packages where you could buy just right away. You buy the planner and you already get 3 expansions. Like, this is for people that know they have a lot to plan for, or they already have a really good grasp on this idea of, like, I know what I need to do. I understand the product and the product ecosystem, and I know I'm just gonna go ahead and, like, buy the bigger pack so that I have the option and I don't have to go buy more of this stuff in the future. So we're gonna add that back in soon, but I was kind of mentioning this before the podcast, but we recently shifted to shipping everything from Amazon instead of out of my basement because um, it was taking hours every night, and those are hours that I could be, spending with my family, or that I could be doing something else in the business, like trying to expand. And from the business side, like you can get stuck in this, like I cannot expand because I'm in my own way. Like I can only make so many things a day, and you get to a point where you have to like outsource something. So we outsourced shipping and fulfillment to Amazon. So even if you buy something on the website or on Amazon, it's coming from Amazon, but it's still kind of tied to the same thing. But yeah, we usually see people come and get those about a month later. And I actually
Okay.
we used to make everything through right in the rain. And unfortunately, they bumped up our wholesale prices by 50%, and it made it kind of unreasonable to keep it going. It's like I'm not gonna like pay people to take this product from me because you know, uh, it's not exactly a charity. I do like the idea of getting people this information in this framework, but I also have to be able to make enough money to do it full time. So, you know, that was one thing we had to cut off. We had to get away from right in the rain. So we used to have something called the ultimate package, which was had a binder cover, and it had the binder, it had a pencil, it had pencil lead, like it was a whole package. You could buy this thing and it's like you don't need to get a pencil, you don't need to get anything. It's ready to go out of the box. Like you have everything you could need. And if you end up needing more, like you made a lot of plans, which is great. But we're going to be bringing something like that back soon. This is going to be our new ultimate package. We're coming back with a binder soon, so this will have the planner inside of it. So that's something that's coming real soon. So we're kind of getting back to our roots a little bit, and we're going to be providing not just the plastic rings that you see on the current field package, which is great for packing. Like, you know, it's very thin, it's low profile, but a lot of people have expressed this idea that they really liked the high quality premium feel of their plan being protected in a like encased binder. So we're bringing that
Like the
back.
in case of emergency break glass kind of thing, like
Exactly.
something you can
Yeah.
open up. And speaking of that, I want to know, like when we're watching, I think it was Crimson Tide with Gene Hackman and Denzel. Do they really like pull out the little card thing and like break it open to read the little like nuke code? Is that just the movies or is that real life?
I am not going to talk about that one.
All right.
Unfortunately,
I mean, it's in the movie.
in the that's yeah, well, yeah. They got that idea from somewhere, I
Yeah,
guess.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you've been kind enough to give us a 10% off code stakeholder at madgear.shop, and you've got a ton of experience writing pace plans and contingency plans and emergency prep for all types of different scenarios with your E6B experience. But out of everything that you have written a plan for, exercise or real world, what one kind of made the hairs on your neck stand up like, oh crap, this is terrifying? If it's not classified, what plan was that?
Um, hmm. Unfortunately, the one there have been I will not be able to talk about. Um, but I mean, you know, you plan for all sorts of things, like even things that are way out there. But if you really sit back, and a lot of times you take these things for granted whenever you're in that type of position because you're just completely steeped in like the worst things you can imagine. You know, you're practicing for nuclear war.
Right.
So I would say just the basics, even the basics of practicing for that type of stuff can be it can be, like, harrowing if you really sit down and think about it. Fortunately, for a lot of people, you know, you can look at it like a job and just say, "Hey, yeah, I'm doing the job," and, like, you don't really, like, sink into it and think about, like, "Hey, what if we really have to do this?" So what I will say is a lot of people, kind of get by with that mentality, and that's perfectly fine, like, I get it. But then other people really get into it and can really look at it for what it is and say, "I really hope we don't have to do this," because that would be pretty crappy. So I would
You're
say
right.
it's just the basics.
A lot of people do gravitate towards the potassium iodide pills. Like, am I really ever going to use those ever? But I've got them.
Yeah.
So what questions do you have for us, Sam? Because I've had a ton of fun doing this interview, but what questions do you have for us?
Ooh, okay, yeah, I've got a fun one. What do you think people spend way too much time focusing on? Like, what is the one thing that's like the shiny, "Ooh, like, I'm gonna go this way and, like, focus on this thing," when in reality, it's like maybe 5th or 6th priority.
Ooh,
Is there
pick
one
me.
that sticks
Pick
out?
me.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
got it.
yeah. Okay, so here's my thing is it's the 556 and 223 because I'm telling you, in my opinion, I really think the one we always forget about, we did an episode on this, is the sanitation. Like, I think honestly
Mm.
that if you own 1,000 rounds of 556, your black water is going to kill you before you ever get to rattle all that off. And I think that's the thing that people, they gravitate towards the more guns and ammo, more guns and ammo. And then they kind of go down the line of the food, water, shelter, weapons, warmth, and then they stop before they get to like the hygiene and sanitation. And I always think that at the end of the day, if something actually bad happens, you're gonna die of something from the Oregon Trail video game before you ever get a chance to shoot all of that cool guns and 5.56 and 9mm and all that. But that's mine. Chris, do you got one?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. I was going to say optics and knives, uh, because people will go out and spend, $3,000 on a brand new high end scope from whichever manufacturer they prefer. And rather than getting a $3,000 scope, they need a $3,000 training class.
I like
Like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Or a whole bunch of bushcraft knives, right? Like the world's gonna end and I'm just gonna go like make a bunch of traps to catch fish.
Yeah, and you need one good knife and the knowledge on how to use it without, you know, slicing fingers open. We've talked with Joe Flowers about that on bushcrafting and knives and, the types of injuries that can come from it. You need the practice and experience before you need the $500 knife or the $3,000 scope. You need to know what the hell you're doing with it.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
100%. So before we close out, because we're getting close, a couple of things. Yeah, I do want to mention we have a code with you, and it's on our website. If you go to stakeholderprepping.com, you'll find the little Mad Gear logo, and you'll see a link to madgear.shop/stakeholder. And if you use our code, stakeholder, you get 10% off of anything at Mad Gear. So go check them out. Absolutely. And the last thing I would like to say before Chris closes out is page 1 of my Mad Gear contingency planner says, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And that is a quote by Benjamin Franklin. And I love that you have that on there.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I think it really sums it all up, just um, taking a little bit of time to put your actions onto paper, even if you don't know what you're going to do at first, is super important. Just getting into planning it can be cheap, it can be free. You can just get a piece of paper and do it. So that's my real mission, is just to get people thinking about this stuff. So thanks. I appreciate you saying that.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And Sam, it truly has been a pleasure having you on to share your experience and, kind of promote your products, but I think they are invaluable and I'm going to continue to purchase them as I continue to fill out more and more plans. But again, thank you for coming on. This has been absolutely amazing. And for all of our listeners, join us next week. We're always going in a different direction, but we will see you then. Remember, you are your own stakeholder.